I'm joined today by Paul Robinson. After 15 years in the cybersecurity space, Paul saw there was some serious room for improvement and launched Tempus Network, an independent cybersecurity advisory firm, helping companies scale their cybersecurity program. It's my understanding, it's been a while since I took Latin, but Tempus, derived from the Latin word for time, is just what Paul saves his clients, time and money, as they scale their cybersecurity program. So Paul, huge congratulations on this venture, and thank you so much for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations.
Thank you. Thank you for the congratulations. Either congratulations or I feel sorry for you. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for that warm welcome.
Of course. Well, I'd love to dive in and learn a little bit more about your background. Can you walk me through your journey? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I didn't grow up in tech or cybersecurity. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in the late 80s to pre 9/11 is when I grew up in New York City. And my dad was a pastor for a church in Brooklyn where the focus was helping the homeless, the drug addicted, domestic abuse, and things like that. And so he helped me with the greatest business lesson, I think, of all time, which is to be globally aware of your surroundings and to treat people the way that they need to be treated. So that was my growing up. And my first adult job was selling conference call services. So like, this is when you call in a Fortune 500 company and you'd say, hey, have you heard of WebEx? And they're like, oh, video conferencing, that's never going to work. We're always going to be on planes and trains visiting our clients. And okay, fast forward later. But that was my first adult job. And a few years after that, there was a company that had asked if I would come over and help them with their telecom services that they hadn't helped them sell the services. About 2 weeks into that, they said, oh, we're changing the whole business model. We're going into cybersecurity. No clue about cybersecurity at all. I went to my survival mode and said, hey, I got to feed my family. I got to figure cybersecurity out pretty quickly. So got into that in 2009. And, it's been kind of going from there. Early on in my career, I got to witness companies that were just starting out, like Palo Alto Networks, and IBM Security bought a tool called QRadar, Proofpoint. If you're a security professional, these are company names that you're like, oh, wow, they're trading for hundreds of dollars on the stock exchange, multi-billion-dollar market cap, things like that. But I got to see them when they started. And so like just seeing them go from startup mode to that was just this amazing journey that I went on. And then in 2016, there are two sides to cybersecurity. There's a technical side, and then there's a risk side. In 2016, went to a company where I started to learn about risk and compliance and governance and things like that as it applied to cybersecurity. Just a tremendous run that I had there, and learning the business piece of it, because a lot of times we get tied up in the technical aspect of cybersecurity, but there's a huge business component. This taught me the business component piece of it. And then, as we talked about this before, during pandemic, just started really thinking about our industry and how a lot of companies were paralyzed by indecision and not doing things because they thought that it cost a lot of money or it was going to be a time sink and things like that. And so it was ignorance by bliss. And then when something tragic would happen, it's like, well, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And really, it's because of the productization of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a very weird industry because it is a benevolent industry. You're trying to help companies not lose money, not shut down. In the case of healthcare, not die. That's not FUD anymore. I mean, with the connectivity of our healthcare environment, lives can be on the line, or to our power grids, lives can be on the line. And it's just become productized and not a practice. Really, cybersecurity is a practice. And so it's like, okay, if there was a way that I can engage clients and have them take a step back and logically look at cybersecurity, could that be something that I can do? And the immediate answer was yes. And then the elongated answer is how? How would that look? Like I said, I had the greatest business example growing up in my dad to be able to see how you help people and ultimately know your needs will be met. And that is so anti-corporate and so anti, what we've been used to doing. Not saying it's wrong. It's legal, it's legit. People make great money doing it. I used to make great money doing it. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It was taking ownership of my life and taking ownership of my track. And if it works out, great. If not, I'm past the ashamed stage of if I had to go back to corporate. Like, I did something for myself for once, and it's been a really cool journey.
It's awesome. Well, and I feel we're on a parallel journey, so I further commend you, because I get the struggle is real. So what is it that you really love about cybersecurity as it is a problem domain? Like, what is it that you love about it?
Going back to just helping people, I've been able to problem solve really complex things in a simplified way. And that's a big struggle in our industry. Like, it's always a pissing contest with people. Who's the smartest in the room? Who knows the most zeros? Who knows the most ones? Who knows the most bits and bytes and things like that? And frankly, my brain doesn't work that way. I know enough to get by, but I'm not uber technical. But a gift that I've been given is the ability to take complex things and simplify them and make it palatable for everyday people, which is the biggest thing in our industry. Because, yeah, it's great that we can all sit in these nerdy sessions and talk about all these technical things and the alphabet soup of acronyms and things like that. But the real people that are being impacted, the real businesses that could be shut down or severely financially impacted by a cybersecurity event, they don't speak in that language. So how do we take this language and put it over there? It really comes down to bedside manner. And I think it's the same thing for cybersecurity. And where I found my strength is that I could take the Latin piece of it and just break it down into understandable terms and definitions for the average everyday person.
That's great. Well, speaking of the average everyday person, the word cybersecurity inspires fear. I know in my heart, the average Joe heart, are companies taking care of my personal information, of my data? Mm-hmm. Are they making the appropriate steps in their cybersecurity program? Is my fear justifiable?
It's very intimidating. Cybersecurity is very intimidating because there's so many things that can go wrong, and tragedy can strike you from a personal perspective or a business perspective. I really tell people to focus in on the word security and think about it from a physical security perspective. We freely give out our passwords. We get a random email from Amazon saying that your package, which you haven't placed an order in 2 weeks, is delayed. Please sign into your Amazon site right here and get it fixed. And we don't think, and we just get on the Amazon site and put in our username and password, and we're done. And now your credentials are out in God knows where land. It's really one of those things that I try to get people to focus in on the fact of, like, okay, how can I equate this to physical security in what it is that I'm doing? And technology is so geared for us to have us fed into the culture, which is immediate, instant gratification. One of the best things that you could do from a cybersecurity is just give pause. It's a 3-second pause. I worked for the CEO one time. He's like, I can make $1 bazillion if I had a technology that would just cause people to pause for 3 seconds before they clicked on anything, just to kind of process things through the brain. But we're so quick to click on things, and we trust but don't verify what it is that we're doing, and that's what really gets us into trouble. So yeah, it's here. As with anything, there's always risk, and there's always things that can go on. But really, again, 2 key things: focus in on the human element of security and how it equates to cyber, and then just giving pause when you're working in technology and doing things online or on a laptop or on a phone to make sure that you're doing the right things.
Yeah, that's great advice. I do think there's sometimes for whatever reason, a lack of pragmatism or logic when it comes to our interaction with these tools. Do you see clients, like organizations, I should say, being really reactionary against cybersecurity threats or more proactive against them? Where would you say the bulk of organizations fall?
Very, very reactionary. Very reactionary. The reason why cybersecurity is kind of tough is it's very hard to apply all 5 senses to it in a proactive way, and that hinders people. Like, if you don't see it, it's not happening, kind of thing. Like, I'll talk to clients, well, we've never been hacked before. And I'm like, okay, how do you know that? well, our computers are always working and things like that. I'm like, well, you do know that these are criminals that you're working with, and criminals don't knock on your front door and say, hey, I'm going to rob you. Not often. They're usually scouting out your house. They're learning about your plans of, when you're going on vacation. Think of Home Alone. How did they come up with their whole plan? They learned that they're going to Paris for a week. Okay, great. They're not going to be there and whatever. Equate that to digital security. Why are we taking pictures that we're in Mexico when we live in Kansas, and we're telling the world, hey, we are not there. Our house is there ripe for the picking and things like that. And we don't think about that. But then when we come home and everything's gone because someone's used that data and information to ransack our house, then we're upset, we're angry. How could this possibly happen? I hate technology. I hate to, yeah, but you're putting yourself out there. You know what I'm saying? You're putting yourself out there. From a reactive perspective, a lot of organizations and people alike, if we're talking about just day-to-day stuff, we react when we look at our bank account and it was $50,000 and now it's $5. Or we react when it's 3:30 in the morning and none of our technology is working. They've blown up our backups and we are inoperable, hard down completely. And that's one of the biggest struggles that we have in cybersecurity. Now, I think you could go to another extreme where you're just barricading everything and locking everything down and the boogeyman's going to come and get you. But then that really inhibits your ability to do business. I think that's always been something in our industry that's been the challenge is how do you safely enable business? How do you allow yourselves to be productive? Because you're there to do business. You're there to provide goods and services to the general public so you can generate revenue, so you can pay your employees, so you can grow. How do we not go overboard with cybersecurity to where it's inhibiting us from actually doing our actual business of what it is that we're doing? So, Lauren, we live in this world of extremes. Everything is extreme. And I think that has crept into cybersecurity where either your team, let's just roll the dice and see what happens, to team, I can't even log into weather.com without sirens and everything blaring. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's a middle ground that companies, organizations, us, as everyday people that use technology can kind of meet in the middle and say, okay, how am I safely navigating through the most dangerous neighborhood in the world, which is, public internet?
Yeah. Which, I guess 2 questions here. Which industry do you think is the most vulnerable? And which one do you think has the most room for improvement when it comes to their cybersecurity program?
That's a great question. Another great question. This is good. I think the most vulnerable right now is K through 12. The K through 12 vertical is very vulnerable for a couple different reasons. One is limited in staff, limited in financial resources, and really the most vulnerable population out there, which is kids. I'm a dad of 4. I love my kids and, their schoolmates and things like that, and friends. The things that they can lose in a cyber attack is huge. And again, it's not as something as simple as, oh, well, ABC Central School District has been ransomware, no school today. Your kid's data now is at risk. And I was actually in a meeting one time with a K through 12 environment, and I said, you do realize a cyber attack could kill a child? And they all just went up in arms. It's oh, what are you talking about? I'm okay. I'm as a school nurse here. And she was in the meeting. I said, okay. I said, you have a listing of all the medications and diagnoses of the students, right? And she was yes. I'm okay. So let's say that information is compromised and the school bully gets their hands on it, and a child that has mental health issues or mental health disorders that are taking place, and they take their medication list and their diagnosis and they put it on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, whatever social medium, just to humiliate them, embarrass them. How do you think that child is going to react? If a child is struggling with mental health issues, their life is in danger on their reaction to having it exposed and made fun of and trivialized throughout their peers. It is that serious, and even credit, kids' credit scores. If someone goes into a K through 12 account and gets a social security number and the criminal starts opening up auto loans, mortgages, things like that based off of their social security number. Yes, it can happen. I know some people are like, well, that's a little, no, it has happened. Go look it up. It definitely has happened. And then the child goes to apply for a school loan and their credit is 33. And then you're like, well, what happened? And then you go back and see that their data was stolen. So K through 12 is the most vulnerable. I would fastest moving vertical that needs a lot of attention is healthcare. Because again, I think we got to get out from the sneakers Project X mindset of what cybersecurity does and talk about how the virtual does impact the physical. And there have been some amazing technical advances in healthcare from a technology perspective, amazing advances, but they're connected to the internet. And if they're connected to the internet, that means that those devices, those IoT devices, those, charts and information, that is accessible to people that want to cause harm. And so with the rapid growth of healthcare technology, the rapid growth of cybersecurity to protect this information, protect these technologies, has to keep up with that, or else lives are at stake. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and we were talking about the refrigeration system of a healthcare environment. And you wouldn't think about that as like, oh, that could be a potential cybersecurity issue, but the refrigeration system is tied into the thermostat, which is connected to the internet. So if I have a refrigeration system of blood samples, medications, whatever, and someone pops that thermostat and it goes from 40 degrees to 94 degrees, we're going to have problems on our hands. They're one of the most connected verticals that are out there that need the most care and concern because lives are at stake if something were to happen.
Healthcare makes a lot of sense to me. I would have thought financial services or healthcare. I am blown away thinking about academia, and especially at those vulnerable years that you mentioned. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I think we take for granted how connected we are. How do you march confidently into each day, knowing how much risk is out there more than most people? Like, I'm an average Joe, and I don't, and in some ways ignorance can be bliss, but for yourself who's so exposed to so much of the good, bad, and ugly, how do you look confidently at the day ahead of you and how we're acting?
I'll go back to how I grew up. Like, my neighborhood in Brooklyn was wild. Like, it was wild. I would walk to school. It wouldn't be uncommon that I'd see someone getting robbed, or it was commonplace where someone would be walking home from school and catch a stray bullet and die. Like, it wasn't every day, but, that was the risk that I knew stepping out of my house. And it really taught me at an early age that I don't have much control over anything. Like, you got to live in the day. You got to do what you got to do, because I can just sit there and think about all the things that could potentially go wrong, and I'd never leave my house. And then I want to leave my house because then I think of the risk that's involved in my house. Like, you can't outrun it. So we kind of have to do that from a digital perspective as well. There are thousands upon thousands of people that want at our personal data. They want at our connected devices. They want at all the stuff that we do on a daily basis and don't think. It's just being mindful. So little guy walking to school, knowing all this stuff is surrounding me, being aware, like if I did hear a pop in the air, I am hitting the ground. Or, if there's a group of kids across the street with bats and chains and belts and everything like that, I'm probably not going to walk there and like interact with them. But I still need to get to school, and we still need to kind of do our jobs. It's what it is. We just need to be mindful and safe in how we do it.
Outside of the 3-second pause, which I think is fabulous advice before anything, not just clicking, but speaking, acting. What other, I could do it more. What other advice do you have for people? Like I said, going back to the average Joe like myself, what other advice do you have outside of take a second and think before act? What changes would you have people make, maybe to their behaviors or to their level of trust on a practical note? What would you have people change?
Yeah, I'd have people take inventory of their online presence. That would be very important. Like take an audit. Okay, am I doing healthcare stuff online? Am I doing banking online and my Amazon accounts and my social media accounts? What is my presence online personally? And then start to take an audit of that. Okay, I do online banking. When was the last time I changed my password? 5 years ago. Okay, probably time to change your password. I'm on TikTok and I'm doing a dance in front of my house that shows my address to my house. Like, probably shouldn't do that, and like take an inventory of what you're giving out to the general public. You have to really go into it the mindset of, do I really want a complete stranger and, a pariah in society to have any of this information? No. Okay. I'm not saying don't go on TikTok and do your stupid dances. Like, I won't do it. But if you want to do it, go ahead. But maybe not do it with your address, your home address or something that can qualify you as to your location and things like that. Maybe not do it from that perspective. I'm not saying don't do online banking, but changing your password every 5 years, the odds go up increasingly daily that someone's going to crack that and wipe you out. So I think it's just taking a self-reflection and self-audit. I did a TV interview one time for a local news station. We were talking the things that you're giving access to with these EULAs. So if I get TikTok, I'm going to pick on TikTok. I don't know why I keep on bringing. I'm going to pick on them today. But you click on TikTok, and in order to put TikTok on, you have to click on an accept button for their end user license agreement. And we just go, boop, 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 done. And off we go to the races. But when you read those EULAs very carefully, it's pretty scary. Like the access that you're giving them to your phone if you don't take a proactive approach. So we did an audit of the phone of the reporter I was talking to, and like Facebook had access to their microphone, to their camera, because they're sitting there like, well, why is it that I watch this a commercial, an auto sales company, and then 2 minutes later I have advertisements on my Facebook about the same auto sales company? I'm like, okay, let's check. Microphone's on? Yep. They were listening to you. They were listening to you. And it freaks people out because they're like, oh my gosh. And again, we're not going to go to extremes, where we're going back to pagers and beepers and typewriters.
Tempting.
It is tempting. Oh, it's very tempting. It's very, very, very tempting. But it's just taking time and, swiping left and saying, okay, I don't want this application to have access to my microphone. And then miraculously, the ads just disappear, so it's teaching people digital personal responsibility, if you want to call it that.
Well, thank you. I've got some homework after this. I'm not on TikTok, so you'll be happy about that. But as a question then posed to organizations, the same question, I guess, is what can organizations do better at? I mean, is there the 3-second pause for them as well? Is there an audit that they can take of their behavior? I guess, what would you, on the other side of the fence, coach and educate them on?
Security awareness training is a big thing in cybersecurity, where people will buy software and they'll send out phishing campaigns, which phishing means, an attempt to exploit you via email. And that'll be their security awareness training for the day or for the year. And, it's like, pat myself on the back, I did the right thing. But security in a corporate environment is a cultural thing. And when people understand the real life impact of an event, then they start to treat the digital environment very differently. So MGM had a really bad cyber attack. It caused people to have delays in their paycheck, and there were a couple of instances where there were MGM workers, and these are people that are in the services industry that are kind of living paycheck to paycheck. And one lady was like, I can't pay my electric bill because I'm not getting my check this month because of this attack. Like, that's not clicking on a link on that's not, randomly clicking on a link or not clicking on a link every quarter. That's, her lights are going to go off because of a cyber attack. And when we start to get employees to think in this way, that being negligent with the digital trust that has been given to me with the technology that my organization has, then you start to get the culture building. I was involved in a really bad ransomware attack from a healthcare perspective, and the doctors and the nurses were angry. They were angry at it because they were like, this cyber attack has lessened my ability to provide care for those that are in need. Not my backups are blown up, not my domain controllers underwater, but if someone comes in here with an acute health issue and I can't help them, and God forbid something catastrophic happens to them, that's because of a cyber attack. And I'm angry because of this. And when you start getting people to think in that way and in that realm, then things start to change. Then that 3-second pause is not a mandate, but you're automatically, because you're like, I never want to go back to that state again. I never want to go back to the confusion of, am I going to get paid, or is someone's health on the line here, or are financial services not being able to be produced here, with that. So when you build a culture, when you do the phishing, you do the phishing exercises, but that's not the end all be all. You're logically telling people how to live inside a digital world. We do it in the physical world. Because, I know we're in the world of remote and hybrid working, but if you're at HQ and you're working at HQ and somebody kind of, piggybacks you to get in the office and they cause physical damage, like we're already trained, like that. And back to your point of, are we proactive or reactive? Again, being a New York City kid, 9/10/2001 looked a lot different than 9/12/2000, but it took a 9/11 to make 9/12 and going on from that different. Like, I wish, on 9/10, we would have been talking about these things that could have protected us on 9/11. It's the same thing of being proactive of, inside of a digital world. Like, what can we do now so we don't have to taste tragedy to be our beacon light, we'll call it that, to being safer. Like let's not have to taste tragedy to do better in our everyday digital lives.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely, it's sobering, but I think there's a hopeful message here. Like you said, it seems there's an inherent pragmatism. We have to apply the same thinking that we do to our physical reality as we do to the digital. And I think that would be critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And technology is great. It's great. Like, it's been a very sobering conversation that we've had. But I do want people to know, like, technology is great. AI is great. All this stuff is really, really good. And it's revolutionizing our lives. It's just doing it safely. Like, think of the Industrial Revolution when that took place. Like, cars and trains and, all these other things that kind of took us from, pre-industrial revolution to like this thing of like, wow, I can, instead of having to walk 10 miles down the street to see, a family member, I can get in a car and I can be there, as opposed to an hour, I could be there in 5 minutes, and that's amazing. Or, when we were in pandemic, think about how we were able to revolutionize from there. I have family members that lived in Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco and things like that. And I couldn't travel to see them, but 2 clicks of a button here, we're interacting, we're talking, I get to see them live. Like, it's really cool. Like technology is great, but as with like the Industrial Revolution, there were some major hiccups that people had to figure out from a safety perspective. It's the same thing as a digital revolution that's taking place as well. How are we safely enabling ourselves to use technology?
Oh, I think that's very often, unfortunately, not top of mind for us, is that we don't think critically about the tools that we're using. We've sort of blindly accepted them as our guides and our personal assistants, and we've outsourced a lot of our critical thinking in a way. And I think a call to action would be to regain some of that. And so we have more control. We're knowledgeable about what we're clicking on, what we're agreeing to. The tools, like you said, technology, I don't think is evil. I don't have that viewpoint. I think it's the same argument could be made about money. I don't think money is inherently evil. I think it's what you do with it, and I think it's how
Hmm.
you approach it and what you do with it. So,
Yeah.
last question I have for you is, as we go into this new year and as you approach April in your second year as a business owner, what is top of mind for you?
A couple of things. One is, and I'll go on a quick tangent here. There have been terrible, and you see this in your world, terrible layoffs. I would encourage people to take ownership of their careers, because I'm sure you do have a lot to offer, and just see how you can do it on your own if you have to do it. I would hate to see people just sit there and kind of, just wallow in that and not think that they have anything to offer, because it is a devastating thing. I've been laid off before. It's devastating. Like it crushes your ego, crushes your soul. You don't want to do anything. I get it, but just encouraging people that, if you don't have a job, or you just get creative, start getting creative in how you can get out there, produce content. You are good at something, and there is something inherently inside of you that the world could benefit from. Put yourself out there, write, do videos, do TikToks, do whatever you want to do, but to get yourself out there to create content and create a way for yourself. From a technology perspective, this is a no duh statement. AI is just going to take off even more than it has. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of nervousness around, the capabilities of AI. I'm here to tell you, it's not going anywhere. So when somebody gets on, a soapbox or writes a blog or something like that from their mom's basement, like, oh, the AI, this is just a fad. It's here. It's here. It's not going anywhere, but embrace it. That's the other thing that I see this year, that is going to be impacting a lot of lives even more.
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, taking ownership of your career, thank you for inspiring me and others as you have with Tempus Network and your own endeavors. Congrats
Thank
again
you.
on this
Thank you.
successful, first year. And thank you for sharing so many great insights today. The education is invaluable. I think this is a subject that doesn't get as much attention as I think it ultimately deserves. So I really appreciate you coming on Cupalo Conversations and talking about it today.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and the best of luck and success to you. And yeah, find Lauren out there. She's doing some good stuff on her end as well.